right, hello. Sorry about the wait. We are in quorum. And it looks like we're missing Chris. And Efren has a prior engagement, so Efren will not be making it, but I am joined here by Michelle and Alan, and Bev is remote. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hooray, this is great sound quality, I hope, compared to normal. All right, we are meeting for a working session of the board. Let's do a quick attendance. We have Beverly Wolf.
Yeah. Oh, do you want me? Oh, go ahead.
Alan McPhee.
Here.
Michelle Bosley. Robin McDonald. Here. Stephanie Bixby. Stephanie. Like Stephanie is not here.
Thumbs up.
Efren Ramos. I don't believe Efren is here. And then Chris Albano. We have Chris? No Chris. All right. We are in quorum. We have 4 of 7. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:26 p.m. on June 13th, 2024 of the Board of Trustees of the Pullman Community Montessori. I am going to just jump right in with our board updates and action items. First, we're going to start with the discussion of the solution. And Bill has provided us with some information which I included in our agenda, and Bill is here with us. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Would you be able to kind of give us a rundown of what this means and what we're entering into?
Yeah, I think the background, there's obviously some information there. I think the talking points over that information would be that essentially there are 2 separate processes here, right? So you have a nonprofit that's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation incorporated in the state of Washington, authorized by the IRS to be a nonprofit entity. That nonprofit then entered into what is essentially a contract with the state of Washington to operate a charter school. Right. What the commission has overseen is a revocation of that charter school contract. Right. And so that, as we know, is in the process now of terminating. Separately, we have this nonprofit corporation without the school, which was the purpose of the founding of that nonprofit corporation. Right. It is now at this point insolvent. Right. And so dissolution is the nonprofit wind down process that protects the board in this case. Right. From any outstanding litigation, from creditors, et cetera, right? It is the process to close that corporation. It is a separate process, largely concurrent, at times overlapping with the charter closure, but it is a separate legal process, and that's what we're here to discuss today. The dissolution process is overseen by the state attorney general. That's the entity to whom this board would apply for the right or the ability to actually dissolve the corporation. So it is not actually overseen by the commission. That being said, the commission has oversight of the charter school contract. And so an important thing to keep in mind as a board is that the dissolution of the nonprofit entity dissolves almost everything related to this nonprofit entity, except the things that are required of this board through the charter closure process. That being said, we can largely handle those responsibilities throughout the wind down. And so I think that's kind of the table setting there. Jacob, is there anything else you would add? I'd also obviously encourage folks to read the attached document as well, but that's kind of the talking points that go with it.
I would like to note Stephanie Bixby has joined the meeting. And Bev, were you able to record that for attendance? Okay. All right. And then
yeah, and just to add to Bill's comments, that is exactly right. And of course, I messed up and now I have to put screen filters. I have nothing to add.
All right. So at this point, it is open for discussion.
I was
Would
just
any of our board members have questions?
I was just wondering if we have, just to get some sense of a timeline, like how long are we anticipating, like both processes, like the closing of the revocation of the contract, overseen by the commission, as well as the dissolution of the 501c3.
And then super quick, I would like to note that Chris Albano has joined our board meeting. Chris is here if you'd like to record him as present. And we're just discussing the dissolution document that we received from Bill.
So the two processes, dissolution can actually be it can be a relatively quick process. So it's there's a matter of filing a dissolution plan. The board would have to make a motion to dissolve, file a dissolution plan that would need to be approved by the state attorney general. That plan has, I think, 2 separate notices that the organization needs to post publicly to allow creditors that would like to be addressed through the dissolution process to kind of join that process. But I believe those are separated by about 2 weeks each, and so that's a process that can probably be done in about 2 months. The charter school closure is somewhat longer. Functionally, the charter school year runs through 8/31, right? And so while I think the students are done tomorrow, right, all of the reporting requirements, the revenue that is attached to those students, and as Robin, Allen, and Desiree could attest, right, some of the wind-up work of just the school year itself, right, is going to continue over the summer. And so we will actually get to August 31st. At that point, that fiscal year would close. The charter school contract itself will cease, and then we'll have to go through the final sort of verification procedures, the final financial reports, right? So we'll have a year-end report that's due to the state. We'll have to get an independent audit of the financial results. Once the independent audit is complete, then the state auditor's office will both complete their audit for the school year, but also a closure audit. And at the conclusion of all of those processes, then the charter school itself is dissolved. Timeline-wise, I guess that could be as short as 8 months. It could be as long as 2 years. I think, again, with the sort of talking point of those being independent or separate processes that are largely concurrent, the faster the dissolution happens, the faster the resolution of the charter contract happens as well, in my experience.
Thank you.
And then, does anyone else have any questions?
No.
And Jacob, would you like to go over your portion now? Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Pleasures of working from home. In the dissolution aspect, what we're really talking about is because Coleman Community Montessori is a 501c3 charitable, we need to go with the processes that the statute lays out for nonprofit corporations. That is going to involve an official vote to dissolve, which is technically kind of scheduled for today. There's an official vote to dissolve today. There's also kind of an official vote that I will send out later that kind of details more about what this will incorporate in terms of the actual dissolution. The details, I guess. But really what we're talking about is we vote to dissolve. You authorize certain officers to kind of carry out the dissolution. In this case, I'm assuming it's going to be Robin and probably Alan with help from Bill. The first step is to notify creditors, known creditors, make sure that everyone's kind of taken care of on that end. And then we go ahead and go through the process of getting authorization from the Attorney General's office. Because we have charitable assets, the Attorney General's office needs to have their say. That takes when we submit the request to the Attorney General's office, it takes about 20 days. That's what they say in the statute. It needs to take 20 days. We also have to get authorization from the Department of Revenue, clearance that we have paid all of our Department of Revenue associated taxes That takes about 10 days in of itself. I usually do that concurrently with the AG's approval. And once the AG has given their clearance, once the Department of Revenue has given their clearance, we can officially file the dissolution with the Secretary of State's office, which is just a simple document that says we complete all the requirements. So the actual legal aspect of dissolution is pretty simple, straightforward, and itself probably won't take more than a month. But that being said, there's some things that probably have to happen once you go for approved dissolution. We're probably still going to want to do some wind up, especially with some of the creditors that we've been talking about. So it might take a month, might take about up to 2 months for the actual dissolution to occur.
And I know we were talking about who all needs to stay on. At what point do we downsize the board?
Great question. So I really I don't advise any particular timeline on that. Board members, you are free to resign at any time you want, or and stay on as long as you want. I think the idea is though that Robin and Alan need to stay on. I mean that's kind of the idea with the motion, the bigger motion that you're probably going to approve later on. That Alan and Robin are staying on, and anyone else can really get off when they feel like it. I've written a provision into the more detailed resolution that says all other board members resign immediately or at a given date, but that I don't have to include that. You can resign, one of you wants to resign at one point and the other one wants to resign another. That's fine. Really, the key there though is just making sure that there's 2 people that stay on.
And will that be an issue with our bylaws, since our bylaws say we need to have at least 5, or is that point it doesn't matter anymore? Because
at this point, it's kind of moot. At this point, we're in a wind-up phase where we just need to get things done. So
I mean, we'd have I think probably a soft recommendation here to keep the current board in its current format until August 31st. The dissolution itself, once the charter closure process is completed, the dissolution itself can take place with very little board requirement or commitment, right? So at that point, it's very easy for it to be Robin and Alan. I think from a sort of I guess just the human side of working together, the dissolution itself doesn't discharge the requirements of closing the charter school contract. And so, I think there's sort of a collective element of being there together to get through these last couple of months of that element. That being said, everybody has different life circumstances, et cetera. So, I would call that kind of a soft recommendation. Certainly board meetings in the next 2 months could be very, very short too, right?
And Bill, I didn't.
What does that look like normally, Bill? I mean, those final board meetings, what does that normally look like?
Well, you'll still have a consent agenda to approve, right? I think so. It is. I think we owe, the state and the stakeholders in general or broadly, the operation of that charter school contract through 8/31, and so I think that would include, approval of a consent agenda. The sort of structure and format of board meetings that you've had to date. Obviously, without the requirement to plan for next year or beyond, August 31st.
And Bill, I didn't catch when you had your moment there before. Would your recommendation be that we officially approve and move into the dissolution process after the August 31st date, or are we doing that before the August 31st date?
I think we could do it before. I would just encourage again, it is not. I don't have any authority one way or another here, right? So this is purely a recommendation. But my recommendation to the board in that group solidarity, and especially knowing the work that Alan and Robin have put in up till now, and and will put in to help wind things up, that the board as a whole continue to support them, and not have those significant resignations before August 31st.
Understood.
Moral support for right?
Because I also think it reflects being responsible with public assets and funding, right? And I think Robert and Alan have really respected the energy and effort with which you've brought to that charge, right? And so I think it would be, that's the angle from which I'm coming.
Yeah. And to also clarify my comments before, part of the resolution, if if the idea was that we'd go below the bylaws, you know, with in one fell swoop, part of the resolution would be sort of an authorization to amend that part of the bylaws to allow for lower board members. But hearing Bill, I actually then agree with Bill. I would put my recommendation to Bill. Bill's recommendation.
Does anyone have any questions about that portion of this? Okay. The next piece was Finance Committee, and Alan was going to discuss finances as well as our bank updates and the disposition of the Finance Committee.
Okay. You can hear me now, Bev? Good, thank you. About the Finance Committee. I ran this by JPG before this meeting, and it doesn't sound like the Finance Committee is needed any longer for review of ongoing financials because there aren't any. And as a consequence, I propose to discontinue the Finance Committee as of now, which would result in the cancellation of next Monday or Tuesday's meeting, I think, one or the other. Given this substantial turn in events, and Bev, what's your feeling? Does that need to be put to a vote? Since the board elected Kim and Caitlin to join the Finance Committee, then that's why I wonder.
I don't really know. I'm sorry. We did. I mean, I don't think it would hurt to have a vote because we did vote to add them to the committee. It has been a standing committee since the very beginning, since before we opened the school. So perhaps just for the sake of completeness, we should go ahead and vote.
Okay. And when we add a voting matter to the agenda without it having been on the agenda first, do we need to vote on that as well? Do we need to vote to vote?
We could vote to amend the agenda.
Okay.
By adding this.
Okay. I have another matter that probably needs a vote as well, and that's banking. So I move that we move the agenda to consider
just a
those
quick
two
clarification.
items.
Just a quick clarification to be specific in the motion. There will still be financial statements for the board to review and approve. However, a finance committee is not required to review and approve that beforehand, right? It is a best practice in an ongoing operational situation. In this case, I think from an expediency standpoint, best use of everybody's time, the board itself can do that as part of the monthly board meeting.
Thank you.
I also have something to add a little bit too, just to clarify on the motion. If it's a standing committee, that's I'm sorry, I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but if the bylaws specifically state that this is a standing committee and the motion is to get rid of the committee, which I gather that was it, but maybe if it's not, if the motion is to get rid of the committee, then it's actually a motion to amend the bylaws to get rid of that standing committee. So just so it's clear on the motion.
Oh, okay. And thank you, Jacob. But what would distinguish that from the number we have on the board?
Well, would, and I just want to make sure. I mean, again, I don't have the bylaws in front of me. So, but if the bylaws say that there are standing committees, and one of the standing committees is the Finance Committee, and the vote right now is to remove that committee. It's not a vote to remove the committee; it's a vote to amend the bylaws to no longer have that as a standing committee. I don't think that necessarily changes. I mean, I think to amend the bylaws is probably a majority of all directors, which I think majority of all directors can, there's enough here to vote in that fashion if that's the majority of all directors. So,
as we have a meeting next Thursday, can I suggest that we hold off until we've got the clarification? Because I do think in our bylaws, we have written the process by which we can amend the bylaws. And I think that might include having the written changes to board members a certain amount of time ahead. It's possible. So I just so we can follow our procedure and our, you know, as it's laid out in the bylaws. If that's okay, I think it would still be okay to cancel the meeting if there was no purpose in having that meeting, but that we would know for sure how to do it. And I'll after the meeting's finished, I'll look through the bylaws and first make sure it is a standing committee, and second, then see what the process is, because I think it involves in writing and a time ahead of the vote.
Okay, thank you, Bev. I appreciate that. So what I said is FYI only, pending the meeting next week. Okay. And the other matter I wanted to bring to your attention was regarding banking. Our bank accounts with Banner Bank currently have as signatories John Castleman and Layla Buick, with Dory Main also listed as secretary. What I propose is that we change that such that Robin and I are signatories. And I don't think it's necessary to list secretary. If it is, could we list you, Bev?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Banner Bank needs that to be specifically stated in our minutes that the board has approved that change.
So do I have a motion?
Can I make a motion to put myself on the bank account? If so, I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was just going to suggest that it's probably best if somebody else
Okay.
proposes that you know, rather than you propose yourself as it.
So I make a motion to do as Alan recommended and to place him and Robin as signatories on our account with Banner Bank.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Stephanie. All opposed? The motion passes. Our next item is the closing transition team. And I don't really feel like this is going to require a whole bunch of time. I just want to really discuss who we're having to support us and kind of the next steps at this point. We have Dr. Gore, who will be providing us technical support throughout the process. She's going to help us with drafting documents, making sure that we're following the timelines correctly, helping us understand things where maybe our manuals provided by the commission cannot. Should be a liaison between us and the commission, and also help us with parent and staff communications as well. Then we have Scott Canfield, who is our point of contact with the commission directly. And then Alan and myself will be providing direct support from the school and the board level. I will be representing the board and the parent point of contact, and Alan will be representing financial aspects and the finances of the school. And then Desiree Porter will be the school ops administration facilities person, and will be overseeing all things related to those. And as we move forward in the process, she's going to really be shouldering a lot of the burden in terms of what happens in the facilities, and as far as like records retention schedules and all of that. Ellen and I will support as we're able to, but we simply do not have access to many of the things she does. So thank you, Desiree. We really, really appreciate your help in this matter. You are amazing. And then some of the things that we're working on now in the process, we've already done a lot of the communication pieces. as far as crafting our messages to families that we're closing, what we're going to help them with in the next steps as far as coordinating with the current school district in Pullman. We had a meet and greet for homeschool interest, and we also discussed more special ed programming in the district. This just happened last Monday. We built our transition team. We've developed a closure plan. The next steps we're looking at, and these are a lot, again, that Desiree's going to be doing, sending communications to newly enrolled families. We have tracking records requests, and that's something that I'll assist with, obviously. I've been doing that myself, but she and I are working together on fulfilling those and making sure they're completed before we're done. And if not, we were able to confirm that the commission will become the holder of our records and will be responsible for that once we're dissolved. And then helping the employees with their PTO, their benefits, making sure that we're helping them transition to new roles and helping provide support through that process. So some of the next steps that are coming up, and more will be discussed at our next board meeting as far as where we're at in that process. We do have a meeting scheduled with Dr. Gore on Monday, I believe, at which point we'll get more updates as to where we are and what needs to be done immediately. Were there any questions about what that looks like, or who's involved? Oh, also Bill. Bill will be helping us too. He is, sorry, Bill. I didn't forget you. We'll be providing support to us from, and guidance in terms of what happens in these closures, helping us coordinate efforts with the state and the commission. And he's really going to be like the man. So thank you, Bill. And then Jacob will be our legal counsel throughout the process, and he'll stay on board till the end and then possibly further, depending on if he is still needed. Yeah, all right. Bev, Stephanie, do you have any questions?
I see Scott is here. Scott Canfield. Is this Scott who's part of the transition team? Yeah.
Yes.
He joined our meeting. I was just wondering, the first two people you mentioned, Scott and Dr.
Gore.
Dr. Gore, what is their affiliation? Or if there is an affiliation, are they part of the commission staff, independent? Just wondering about that.
So Scott is the technical support for the commission.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Gore provides support in these situations. Closure. She's also provided support to Desiree in other capacities. She comes with a really substantial list of experience in supporting schools and promoting equity and diversity. She's been in the sector. Bill, I don't know if you have any more specific details. I know that you worked with her before.
Actually, so my wife worked with Dr. Gore at Summit Sierra. Dr. Gore was an assistant principal in the charter school space, in Seattle area. So I think she's contracting, and then Scott is the full time.
Thank you.
Questions from? Awesome. All right. On to the next item, the disposition of the 501c3. This is really an opportunity, if we have any more questions about this, to ask them now, given what we've heard from Jacob and Bill. Otherwise, this is really for us to vote on the dissolution, which would be effective August 31st. Am I correct, Bill? We're voting to dissolve the charter effective August 31st.
The 501c3 corporation, effective August 31st, yes, which will allow us to begin the process right now, concurrent with the charter school closure.
Can I get a motion to dissolve the 501c3 effective August 31st, 2024?
I would make a motion to dissolve the 503C effective August 31st, 2024.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Bev?
Aye.
Stephanie? All opposed? The motion passes to dissolve the 501c3 effective August 31st, 2024. So now we can get that process started. We will have more updates on the process at our next board meeting, which is the 20th. At which point we will have had meetings with some key players, and we'll have some more information on the process and where we're at and what it will look like going forward. I think specifically a little more information on the financial aspect, if I'm right, Bill?
Yes.
Update that.
Sorry, say it again.
Sorry. Will we have more information on the financial piece of this process at our next board meeting? Or any updates, do you think?
We should have some updates. I don't believe we'll have a final answer on anything. I think for the board's awareness, I think the word insolvency is not used sort of lightly here, right? The financial commitments over the organization exceed the available cash and remaining revenue. And so it is, functionally, a bankruptcy for a nonprofit. And we've started to pull those together. Obviously, first things first is taking care of employees and making sure everything is able to finish out well for students. And then we'll start to see what accrued liabilities start to come in.
All right.
Robin, at our meeting on the 20th, excuse me, we'll have the usual financial update, maybe with a little bit different numbers. But the financials are nearly done for May.
Excellent. Thank you, Ellen. And before we close this out, do we have any more questions or comments, concerns?
I just wanted to comment, just to update the board, that Efren, Alan, and I did work on a letter to go out to people that we thought, might appreciate a sort of personal notification. I was thinking people like Letty, who served as an interim head. We did get that finished, and we have sent it out to quite a few people already. To finish off the task now, I just need some help getting some email addresses, because people like Aubrey, I have her old PCM email address, but that's no longer functional. So I haven't been able to contact Aubrey. I don't have another email address for her. So there's a couple of people like that and a couple of other organizations. But the letter that we sent out to people was published in the paper on Saturday, along with an article about the board's decision to not pursue appealing. That was also on front page of the Daily News, like above the fold, last Saturday. So I think that's notification has gone out to the community. So that was it. Just wanted to update. We did that work we said we'd do.
Thank you all for putting that together. I think that meant a lot to our partners. I know that I communicated with the National Center for Montessori with Seth, I believe. I was in communication with Raza, with our Raza partners, just letting them know where we're at and what it looks like, and thanking them for their support in this, because I think that's really important. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for going through this journey with us, with me.
Just a comment is that the responses we've got back from people have been mostly very supportive. In fact, all very supportive. We got a really nice email from United Way, because we were due to do a presentation, and from the chamber as well. So
it's my understanding there's a bit of a time capsule being put together. I don't know if you were aware of that, but possibly we could add the letter to that. I believe it was Dave's class was putting it together for just some history on the school, start to finish. In a Rubbermaid tote right now, with some things from the kids and things from around the school, like artwork and projects they've done. So good for thought. Other than that, do we have any more questions or comments? If not, we get a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. I appreciate everyone being here. We're going to adjourn this meeting of the Pullman Community Monterey Board of Trustees at 6 p.m. on June 13th. Thank you all for coming and supporting us, and you have a great evening. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Good night.